It's good to be with you guys today. I'm going to do this real quick. There we are.
Hey.
Hey, Emmett. Good to see you. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Today's topic is kind of fun. Emmett and I just went to a conference and we signed up for another one. So it's something on our mind. But the reason we chose it this week is because actually Joel isn't here because he's at a conference in Spain right now. He's at OFF, and Marcel, one of our clients, is speaking there. Joel is enjoying the time. He's going to do a cohort there. And we started realizing in the last couple of weeks the number of conferences that are popping up and people are kind of going back to the conference scene. So we thought, let's pick this conversation up. One is just to kind of express the thought of like, things are going to be different, right? The conferences are going to kind of be reunions in a different way, or going to have to solve different problems than they did pre-pandemic. But also, do we remember how to do it, and more clearly what the strategy is? So thanks for joining us today. If you don't know me, I'm Tim Thompson. I'm the founder of RevThink. This is Emmett Armstrong. He's one of our advisors, consultants, and overall amazing coaches at RevThink. Emmett and I often talk about NFTs and do our NFT podcast together, but I'm dragging him in here as a cohort in this process because Joel was out. Thanks for coming, Emmett.
Yep. Happy to be the backup.
All right, let's talk about the subject here. So conferences, like I said, you and I just recently went to NFT LA. And, LA as a county seems very shut down. I didn't know what to really expect going into a conference in LA, much like a New York conference. I'm not really sure what the difference will be in geography wise. And I don't know what the word is politically. But I'll say just going to an event where there was a lot to learn, a lot to process, hearing some leaders, maybe being disappointed in some of the leaders. Mm-hmm. But just the overall thought of like conferences, what's coming up next. Give me your kind of like first impression when you think about going to a conference.
Well, for me, it's always an equation of money, like, I mean, I work for RevThink, but you don't pay for all my conferences all the time. Some of them you do, but there's plenty of time where I have to think about what is the actual benefit to me as a business owner. So usually it's a calculation of the cost versus what I think I'm going to learn or what direction I'm going to be headed. Like I went to Promax Games. It was like a minor conference and I would have gone again. It was cool. I got to meet like a writer for Injustice 2 DC video game. I heard some really good talks and I didn't meet anyone or get any connections that I made money off of, but I felt like it was worth it because it was learning about a new segment. So there's intangible investments and intangible returns, but to me, it's a calculation of, I guess, cost versus benefit.
It's interesting you go to cost first. In my experience, although I'll say maybe early on in business, I probably went to conferences for free. I was one of those people that would show up at the conference, not pay for anything, but hang out in the bar. And that might be just a phase of business or being kind of stupid and cheap. I don't know which one that is. But it's definitely one of the things I'm like, I don't really understand what it was. And before I threw a bunch of money at it, maybe I should go and see, is this the demographic people I would want to talk to? Are there potential clients there? And I felt like when I was in that mentality, I wanted the clients to prove to me it was worth buying a ticket. And I thought I needed them to do that job instead of me going to it. Today, I think I've flipped it to recognize conferences are a total ROI kind of process. So when it comes down to thinking about, is it worth it money-wise, recognize what the opportunity is that you're looking for in a conference and how you're going to measure the ROI from it. So if you're going there for sales, how do you know there are people there they're going to buy your goods? If you're going there for education, how do you know the topics are going to meet the need? Or for networking and time spent with people, are the people you want going to be there? But all those are super great benefits that come from a conference, way more than the cost analysis part of it.
Sure.
But I'm with you. I think there's a money part of it. Let's talk about the benefit of a conference. Like when you think about what it takes to go, or the time it takes off, or you think time is one of those structures that you think, is it worth spending my time away from working on projects. What kind of benefits do you think would be, considerable to make the decision of a yes or a no from choosing one conference over the other?
Yeah. Well, lately for me, the conferences that I like to go to are conferences that I think are going to expand my mind in a certain way. So I went to a conference in San Francisco for Webflow. They're like a visual page builder. They do like fancy web design. It's a tool. And I learned a ton about just technology and shifts that were coming up in that world. So it helped me like develop my career, even if I didn't find any clients. And then we're going to these NFT conferences, and that's totally like brain melting, mind shifting. Like you're going to learn something that you never knew. You're going to meet somebody or talk to somebody that's doing something cool. So I think that's probably the biggest intangible benefit. And I'm at a place now where I can afford to do that without having to necessarily land a client. Like my first year I went to Promax, I was like, I better come away with this with some money, because otherwise I got nothing.
I totally remember that moment when you're like, I know there are potential clients there. I'm spending to go meet them. And when you do it that way, right, your target, your focus for that week is really find a human, process a human, convince that human to buy your goods, and move on to the next human, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's not a mind shifting process. Totally. Yep. I think a lot of us go to conferences like Promax for that networking, for that client buildup. It's actually one of the items why I tell business owners definitely go to conferences, definitely go to Promax, because there are buyers there. And there's this really interesting thing that happens at certain conferences, Promax again being one of them, is that your client is expecting you to be there and selling to them. It's part of the culture that's there. So you get this permission already granted because the conference did a really good job of saying, hey, buyers and sellers, this is a meat market. You should come together. And therefore, people who buy tickets are kind of giving you permission to get started that way. And that's a great moment. If you were looking to cold call somebody or try to do it any other way, you don't really get that blanket permission that you do of like, if I meet you in the elevator, I can pitch you something.
Yeah. I had this great conversation. It was a friendship that I struck up over 2 years of Promax with like one of the heads of CNN International. He was like the 60-something-year-old dude. And I went around New York with him 2 years in a row. He just took me to parties with him and his crew. And I asked him a bunch of questions, because that was the first real client that I ever got to talk to. And my biggest question was, why are you here? Like, what do you get out of this? And one of his big answers was, they want to meet all the top hot creatives, and they want to see the new work, and they want to get vendors for their business. So it was really insightful. And I think you're totally right.
I love that, because, if I thought my job going to a conference was to convince somebody to give me their time, and I spent all my effort begging permission to get their time, when they were going to give it to me anyway, I really wasted too much energy on something that is a total go-to.
Yeah.
Instead of going with, you're kind of what you're saying is like there are some situations that are so natural. You can basically befriend a future client and just go hang out with them. And that's why you're there, is to have a conference friendship, to meet people and to be asked questions. Hey, what's important to you? Why did you guys do this? And before I start pitching you my services, let me ask, what the hell's going on with CNN? Are you guys going to survive? Or I don't know what you can say to somebody right now, but
yeah,
I love that part. And as a consultant, that's why I say, like, hey, plan your steps ahead so that there's a moment to go meet people and make that part of it. I think some business owners, they're not that comfortable with that meet and greet part, though.
Yeah, the worst part for me is going to a party that you have permission to be there, or in your case, you just walk in, but I always feel like I have to be invited, or I have to know about it or whatever. But then you go and you don't know anybody, or the host, but you're not going to talk to the host the whole time. That's lame. So spending thousands of dollars on travel and hotels and conferences, I'm like, if I'm going to go to this party, like I always feel the pressure to like get something out of it. I already said that, but especially at parties when you don't know anybody, that's the worst.
Yeah, there is like some social engineering that needs to take place. If that is why you're going to the event, isn't there? So social engineering to me, and we've encouraged people for, is, you can ask people ahead of time, are you going? I'd like to meet you. Even if they're a stranger, but you think they're going to be there, you can't, it's LinkedIn works that way and people work that way. And the answer is yes. I could, numerous amount of times, I knew people I wanted to work with in the future, and really reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm going to Promax, you going? And that's all I had to say. Never met them before. We kind of just know of each other. And the person goes, yeah, I'm going. And I'm like, cool, I want to buy you a drink.
Nice.
But that's all I have to say. And then when you see them, it's like, hey man, I owe you a drink. And you're really just saying, can I talk to you for 20 minutes? I'd love to hear what's going on. But also preparing someone ahead of time, it gives them a chance of like, okay, cool. And then they might Google you and find out what the heck you do. So when they take the drink, they might already have questions for you. So that if you're intimidated, you might be able to grease the wheel a little bit and kind of social engineer an opportunity to be there. I think Joel's favorite trick is the wingman. Where you could also say, hey, let's work the room together. Let's be strategic. And, my whole job is to go meet a stranger. And if they're relevant, I say, oh, you have to meet Emmett. You just got to meet Emmett. Come over here. This is so-and-so. He wants to get in NFTs. Tell him what you do. I don't even get NFTs. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to go find the next sucker. I don't know, but then find the next target. And then you can have that easy. If that's what you need, you be honest and make a plan. Go out there and have a wingman do that work for you.
Now, this kind of reminds me, I want to get your thoughts here, because you talked about engineering a situation where you're going to have that conversation. That's kind of what people are wanting to do with those silly like handbags full of gummy worm bracelets and stuff, right? All those sponsorship deals. They're trying to get their logo in front of someone to have a conversation. I have personally never thought that's a great way to do it, but maybe you know a little more than I do, and maybe you have different thoughts.
Sponsorship is interesting, isn't it? Because it feels like the conference pushes it on you. And I almost feel like conferences, when they push it on you, they have the wrong pitch. They're saying it the wrong way. And what their proposition is to say, hey, there's 5,000 people. They're in your marketplace. If they see your logo, you're more likely to convert than somebody that doesn't have their logo seen. And that seems to be what the pitch is. As if a logo being seen is the work. And I would often talk to conferences and say, well, listen, I appreciate that. But honestly, even the fact that you made the introduction, I still have to do all the work of pitching myself, selling them, and then I have to go to work again to earn that money to pay back the sponsorship. So there's multiple stages after the sponsorship that cost me time and money before I actually get a conversion. Yeah. And that simplified idea. But I'll tell you the trick that I learned about sponsorship. When you're paying into a conference, you actually have an opportunity to become a partnership with that conference. And depending on what packages you get or what you're asking for, but often with a sponsorship comes access to a mailing list or certain sessions, conferences, a green room, maybe a dinner, or even on the most basic level, you say, I'll buy a conference, but you have to introduce me to that guy from CNN. And you make the conference be your wingman.
Nice.
And so you're like, dude, I'll pay $5,000, have my gummy worm thing in there, whatever. And sure, thank you for the beer garden, breakout session that I get to build a booth. And now I don't get to move and socialize. I have to stay next to my booth while everyone else is having fun. Not the greatest conversion, but if you introduce me to the person I need to meet, and you tell them about me.
It's like a bribe or something, like, okay, I'll buy your sponsorship. You got to do what I want to.
It's not, and it's not really a bribe. If you think about what it is, it's a higher level of the same strategy. Oh, you're giving me access. You're giving me exposure to people I don't yet know. How about you give me direct exposure to very specific targets? And the conference, that's what their job is. Their job is, one of their agendas is to connect people to people. So if they can make that connection, why the heck not? They'll totally do it. And I heard once that, when you're at the big financial conferences, sometimes those connections are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So people will buy $100,000 sponsorship package to be able to go into the green room after someone speaks just to meet the person that they wanted to meet.
Sure.
And the speaker understands, hey, part of my gig being on stage is to sit in the green room and meet people that paid to get access to me. But it's a legitimate, they're vetted people.
Yeah.
It's not just fanboys and girls trying to meet somebody that they think is important. There's that
And
opportunity.
Tim Thompson, who walks in the green room whenever he wants.
Well, yeah. Or yeah. Are you talking about when I went backstage?
I don't know.
Yeah, right. So I'll say you're right. I think if you listen to the pitch and you have the most elementary level of a sponsorship, it's probably not worth your effort or knowing how to convert. There's a lot of time and effort put into it. And then sometimes, again, I feel like you get locked into it, but there is ability to, if you think of them as your partner and you're just participating with them, you can think of more creative ways to convert.
Yeah, no, I like that, because if I'm going to spend that much money, if that was important to me, or if I thought there was a good opportunity, I would probably, like you're saying, leverage it for something on top of the logos or the whatever drop-ins in the bag or the name, the lanyard, all those little things.
Yeah, and I've worked with conferences to make Joel and I've worked conferences and to make products for them. So we actually, with some conferences, make a class that then they can sell sponsorship on our class.
Right,
So
I
they're
remember that.
converting that stuff. When I did the stuff for NAPD, we pitched forward that entire idea and made 3 different programs, but also at the very end, we made a conversion for a membership group that didn't have anybody dealing with them too. So they created a value-added service, and they took care of us. They without paying, they gave me a sponsorship deal. But then if I paid a little bit more, they'd give me other pieces. And I learned to grab my clients to get on stage. So if you ever get a chance to speak at a conference, which again, I encourage you as part of your stages of your creative career to recognize that eventually you should leverage yourself forward and into being a leader that way. One of the greatest things you could do is not to use the stage just for yourself. One of the funny ways I think of it is when given a stage, I should use that moment to bring up one of my future clients to join me. Meaning, I've always wanted to interview you. I wanted to actually work with you. How about I use this stage as an excuse to start a conversation? And then afterward, maybe we be a vendor relationship. And to make something that satisfies that client's needs instead of your own agenda is a great way to win-win-win in the conference situation. So sometimes those sponsorship deals and deals you can make with conferences and partners really work out.
Nice.
Yesterday I talked to Steve Kazanjian. He's the president of Promax. I addressed the fact that his leadership in Promax has so many different facets that I feel like has grown their organization and helped them survive through the last couple of years. But one of the things I think he does so well is he's often putting thought leadership forward in a conference. So in our conversation yesterday, we spent about an hour in confab talking. He said directly what he's looking for is for the community to talk about what their needs are. So not just to promote and point to things of what they did and like, look at all this pretty stuff I already did. It's to create a moment of saying, what's coming up, what's stressful to me, what worries me in this streaming space versus traditional broadcast space. And if you can develop the ears to hear what the problem is, you might actually discover a solution that separates you from the crowd. So when in certain conferences you choose, I feel like there are conference directors and agendas that kind of fit that need. And I think that's what you are liking about in the NFT space, which you function in a lot, is that there are people focusing on those problems. There aren't solutions. It's what makes the conferences frustrating sometimes, but they're focusing on the problems, which are kind of exciting for some of us.
Right.
That's your answer, right? I set you up.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's people that go on stage and they say, this is a great use case, and now we don't need nations anymore. And I say, wow, that guy has been smoking a lot of weed. But no, you learn things that expand your mind. And I think it's a great idea to follow the problem, because that's the first indicator that there's something wrong.
Yeah, if you want to be in the broadcast space and you go to a conference and you're listening to one of your clients talk about how difficult it is to compete with streamers, and you're a creative director and you think you have an edge or a different way of reaching an audience, that you heard a problem and you can pitch yourself forward without the client asking you to do something. You can pitch yourself forward and say, I have a possible solution. I'd love to collaborate. Let's make a couple $100,000 budget and explore different ways of solving this problem with my direction. Those are moments that can be discovered and give you permission to ask those questions. But there is a lot to kind of processing a conference. So I wanted to do this, and just in the last kind of minutes, let's talk about a couple of practical things that if you are thinking about going to a conference this year, things you should do ahead of time, things you should do while you're at the conference, and maybe things to do in follow-up. And I want you to go back to your on-ramp days of things you used to do before people went to conferences. Talk about what outreach looks like and how to formulate that beginning conversation before people go to a conference.
Yeah, well, first of all, reach out to your existing network and tell them you're going to Promax, because there might be people that don't know, or I guess we're using Promax, but whatever relevant conference is coming up, there might be people that don't know about it that could use it, or there might be people that don't know that you're going to be there, and you just never know what's going to happen. So tell people what you're doing, because then they can refer to you or meet you there. Or even if you're going to Los Angeles for something, they might not go to the conference, but their office is there in Los Angeles. So just see what you can do with your existing connections. And then I think you made a good point. You can broadcast to people. We talk about the bingo card with a short list of people that you want to do business with. Do some research and see if those people are going to be there, or anyone from their team, or anyone that might be a third-party connection. But in addition to your current network, think about your ideal network or your ideal clients and if they're going to be there as well.
And let's say this, like, don't go for everybody everywhere all the time. Like, you really, truly, like you can put on your LinkedIn or your Instagram or whatever, hey, I'm going, because there might be people that want to meet you, and you broadcast so that if they want to meet you, they can reach out to you. You should probably be specific on your time and effort that you have forward. If you go and ask 55 people to meet with you and then you don't follow through, that is the impression you made, is that you don't follow through. So to find the right people to set up that time and be diligent with that effort is probably a good effort, instead of feeling desperate, looking desperate, and trying to get everybody everywhere all the time. But I love it. Like, right, put yourself out there, let people know that you're going. How about at a conference? What do you think is like a good tip to say when you go to a conference? Make sure that you do. One?
My stupid one is that make sure that you have comfortable shoes and that you don't carry your backpack around all day if it's too heavy. Because by the end of the day, like, I've made this mistake before where I have like blisters on my feet and I'm just too cranky to want to meet people. And the end of the day is like the most important part. So I blew all my energy on the walking between educational events, and then I failed to do networking because I was too grumpy.
Yeah. I would also say this, like, if, being intentional with what you wear could also mean make sure that you are intentional with what you're wearing. You are making an impression overall at the conference, and people are very basic and they make the impression of what they're seeing.
Yep.
Some people I know, and we've heard stories about people that wear matching outfits or wear jackets or have changed their hairstyle, whatever, which is kind of funny, kind of cool, kind of has its moment too. But to not take any effort in deciding what to wear or how to look can make a horrible impression. So there's something to say, like, don't just put the hoodie on from the conference that you got in the grab bag and think that's your wear for the next few days. Let's put some effort into it.
Yeah, it's a signal, right? Signaling who you are and what you do.
Yeah, and that you're a business person and you're there to collaborate and do real work. I think my thing I'd say, when you're at the conference, go there to learn. I'll go back to what Steve's saying, like, really take the time to listen to what's actually being said. Sometimes there's a feeder group that are just repeating things or showing demo reels, and that's okay. You can collaborate and be part of that tribal recognition. But there are often people that are giving you a hint or choosing a topic to put some idea forward. And if you're an entrepreneur, they're giving you permission for engagement. And that's future growth for yourself. And I think the opportunity to lean into that moment. Remember when I collaborated with Rita from Snapchat, and to listen to what Snapchat was doing on their platform, the way they were thinking differently, the things that they needed, and they weren't doing any traditional broadcast graphics. You had to think, oh my gosh, there's new moment that's taking place. I can be part of industry growth if I lean into it.
Mhm.
And that always, I mean, my brain loves that kind of thinking. So,
Yeah.
okay. Lastly, I think we all know the answer to this, but let's just say, what should you do after the conference?
Follow up.
Follow
Follow up with your
on,
people.
Please, no matter what it takes, no matter how the effort is, eat the smallest thing, but don't be a fool. Don't invest the money, the time, the new clothing, all that stuff, and then drop the ball on the most important part, which is follow up.
Mhm.
I would say this: follow up before you follow up, meaning think about what the follow up is before you go to the conference and while you're at the conference, because you could set up your follow up while you're meeting somebody. For example, I could say, I'm at an LA conference. I could say, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in New York in 3 weeks. Are you going to be around? Oh yeah, totally. Okay, cool. I'll see you in New York. Now, what that means is I don't have to waste my time right now with you at the conference. You gave me permission to meet you in New York. We'll have a half hour or an hour of your time instead of 10 minutes with distracted. And we already have plans. So now when I follow up with you and say, hey, does Wednesday work? Such an easier follow-up.
Nice.
Then nice to meet you. I hope we get to work together in the future. So when you have these potential plans, even if they're not locked in solid, but the ability to make plans of, I might be in New York in 2 weeks, meaning if you say yes, I'll show up. You really create opportunity all the way around the engagement. I think those are moments that people drop the ball too soon because they're not thinking through all the steps.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I always have my own business cards in one pocket, and then I put other people's business cards in the other pocket. It's just a system. And when I get home, I look at all those cards, and I like what you're saying about have a plan, but keep the cards too, because it's a physical reminder.
And by the way, here's the last trick, and I'll leave people because it's at the half hour mark, but here's the last trick I learned. It's super easy, and I tell you it works really well. You go to someone's session and you listen to them. And then you post on your social media what they said. I really love that Emmett said this, and you tag them. And after you tag them, then you reach out to them and said, I really love what you said. Just so you know, I tagged you over here.
Yep.
And they're going to love that you heard what they said, that you're interested. And what they're going to say? They're going to say, thank you. And thank you begins a dialogue. So you're looking for that thank you to say, no problem. I always appreciated your leadership. I'm always curious about what you guys are doing. I was, like you begin a conversation with them. So really easy. Like they're on a stage, they're broadcasting something. Pick that thing up and run with it outside. Give them the legs that they need. They're waiting for you to partner with them. So thank you, mister. I really love doing this. This is really fun. Maybe we should get Joel away more often. We can have many great things to talk about.
Up to you. It's good to be here.
Well, listen, I appreciate you. Those of you who joined us today. I know that there's great things coming up in conferences. We're hearing about Joel and I have the conference in Serbia that we're doing soon. We've recently talked to Carlos. We think F5's coming back. Promax is definitely coming back with a meet and greet and award ceremony. They're not doing the full conference thing. So there's a lot of great opportunities right now to reach out, meet people, grow your business, meet new clients. So we want to encourage you, tell you it's coming. And if there's anything you can do, let's throw those questions in RevCommunity. We can take our suggestions and others. I know many of you, I see your names, have met you at conferences, and you guys have some good strategies. So let's share this and other things with each other in the community. And Emmett, until Monday when we do our NFT podcast, good to see your face.
Yep.
Have a great weekend.
Yep. You too. Thanks, everybody.
Of course. See you later.